EVE Online offers players a cool new way to play the game for free. My.com announces a brand new game, as well as Skyforge's largest expansion to date. We see some very familiar free-to-play games come to an end, and Arc makes the risky move of releasing paid-for DLC while still in early access. What's happening, guys? James Blonde here with your weekly recap for gaming news and announcements for the week ending September 5th, 2016. And starting out the news this week, unfortunately, I'm going to hit you with some sad stuff first, so that way we can move on to the cool and exciting stuff. Last week, Ubisoft announced that it is ending the support for not one, but 4 of its free PC games by the end of October, and one happening in December. Closing down on October 25th, we have the mighty quest for epic loot, the game that had players build their own dungeon and raid other players' dungeons for loot. Now, that game was really fun for a little while, especially in the beginning, and then, stuff happened. Next up, we have Might and Magic Duel of Champions. It's shutting down on the same day, October 25th. This is probably one of my favorite TCGs, to be honest, so for some reason I enjoyed this one a little bit more than I thought I would. Tom Clancy's ENDWAR Online, the newest game in the group, is shutting down on October 31st. Now, honestly, I don't really think that too many people are going to be sad to see this one go. Not that it was bad, it just really wasn't good either. And finally, Ghost Recon Phantoms will come to an end on December 1st. Now, I think that many would agree that Phantoms was a fairly unique shooter, and for that reason, separating itself from other shooters, I'm kind of sad to see it go. These closures mean that not only the games are taken offline, but also their websites, forums, and social media channels. And according to Ubisoft, the decision wasn't easy, and they definitely tried other ways, but in the end, they decided to close these games down to focus on other projects, whatever that might be. In similar news, FireFall mysteriously slipped into silence last week, which was a bit ironic that I picked on it when talking about Gigantic needing to get on the ball in last week's recap, but at that time I had no idea this was going on, so not related. Several media sites picked up on this sudden disappearance of FireFall's game servers, website, and Steam page without any messages from the developers, which is really odd if you ask me, especially since it was the servers, the website, and the Steam page. It's not like they're all connected by one on and off switch. To me, that has "We slipped quietly into the night" written all over it. However, it turns out that all of this was just a unexpected downtime, according to a later update by a Red 5 admin. So for now, the game is still alive and breathing. Barely, though. It's kind of in the ICU. So it turns out it was just a close call with death, and perhaps FireFall saw its life flash before its eyes. Most of which was probably in beta. But moving on to some less depressing news, EVE Online shows us a way for players to play for free, and it's rather interesting. The developers believe they found a perfect solution to let both new and veteran players of EVE enjoy the game for free without breaking or altering the best parts of the game, pretty much keeping it the same as it is now. They're doing this through the clone states. Now, the developers have structured the clones to have prepared neural pathways for a certain set of skills, which is known now as the alpha state. These clones are made available to players freely, and the skill set that alpha state clones can train is specific to the race selected for the character, and it includes skills for flying Tech 1 frigates, destroyers, and cruisers. So there are limitations, as you might expect, but they are definitely reasonable ones. Skill training is slowed a little bit for alpha state clones, but if that isn't enough, you also have the option to go with the Omega State clones, which act just like your character does on a subscription account. So, full-scale access, in other words. With this new system, anyone who signs up for EVE will be able to play for free with the Alpha State clones, and at the same time have access to the Omega State clones for the regular subscription cost. So I think that's going to be an awesome new system for players who are wanting to play but don't really want to pay the monthly cost. And I do know that the dev team and the players have been looking for an effective way to do this for a long time, so check out the blog post and the video for plenty more details. Next up, the Allods Team and My.com announced a massive expansion for Skyforge this past week called Ascension, because every free-to-play MMORPG needs an expansion called Ascension. Everybody's doing it, so now it's Skyforge's turn. This expansion features a new extended progression campaign in the form of the Regions map, where players can unlock access to new adventures, classes, and symbols. Over 100 marks on this map represent adventures and missions that make progression very clear and keep gameplay fresh, all while players improve their characters. Combat will become even more interesting in this expansion thanks to the new extended combat system. Now, when you defeat monsters, you can take their weapons or even part of their bodies to use them against other enemies. Not only that, but you can also kite and dodge enemy attacks more consistently now. There's also a new politics system, so from now on, Immortals can elect who the world of Alien will answer to for the next couple of weeks. Players will be able to elect or be elected and take control. And that's not all for this expansion. There's a new raid for all gods and a brand new class, the Outlaw, a charismatic, daring, and dangerous hero who expertly wields 2 pistols and even dynamite when necessary. As you can tell, this expansion is a really huge update for Skyforge. Look forward to seeing it live in the game sometime this fall. Also from the Allods Team and My.com comes a brand new game announcement. This one is called Cloud Pirates, and as the name kind of implies, it's an action multiplayer game with customizable airships and aerial battles. So this is what happens when you combine the team that made Skyforge with Dreadnought's gameplay mechanics. From the looks of things, you can have a decent number of players fighting at once, which is good, and according to the new site, as you progress, you'll gain access to tons of unique upgrades and weapons that will grant your airships new abilities. It's not exactly Guns of Icarus, where you control everything as a crew on one particular airship, but it looks pretty cool anyway. Not exactly sure when to see this game in beta, but signups are already available, and the site says that the game will arrive sometime this year. This past week, we saw the launch of Attack on Titan Wings of Freedom for PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One, and the game is doing really well so far. Most of you guys are probably familiar with the anime, and this game is just like the anime. It's just as exciting and action-packed as you expect. And the cool thing with the story mode is that if you've already experienced the anime or manga, it kind of feels like you're making a difference in the game. Unfortunately, you can't change the fate of the iconic cast members when they get grabbed and eaten and stuff, but it still puts you in the experience a little bit more so. I got a chance to check out the game early at E3 this year, and it's surprisingly good, and the ratings on Steam support that. Now, it is a fully fledged AAA game with a fully fledged AAA price point, but apparently it's worth it for Attack on Titan fans. As a reminder, right on schedule with the typical area game launches, Twin Saga is now in open beta. Now, I've yet to get a chance to play the game, but from what I've heard, it's kind of what you'd expect from X-Legend, meaning that it's just like all their other games, perhaps even a watered-down Eden Eternal, so I've heard. The game visually looks okay, but you can tell that from the trailer. But it also looks just like all the other X-Legend games, with the same models, the same enemies almost. So with all that in mind, even without playing it, you can tell that they haven't really reinvented the wheel with this one. The Terra cottages are kind of cool. I'm not saying it's not worth trying. In fact, that's why I'm mentioning the open beta. Now you can try it without the feeling of commitment. Let me know what you guys think if you do end up trying it. Also in open beta, we have The Elder Scrolls Legends, the Hearthstone-like card battle game developed by Direwolf Digital and published by Bethesda. Now, what sets this game apart, besides it being in the Elder Scrolls universe, of course, are the lanes that let you play around large threats that you might not be able to deal with if you had a single lane. So you actually have to weigh your options, spreading your threats across the 2 lanes versus using just one because of the cards that impact creatures in a single lane. It's designed to add diversity and strategic depth, and I think it does that pretty decently. And that's just one of the unique elements about this game. The nice thing is, for those of you who are into card games like Hearthstone, as well as the Elder Scrolls lore, this game is now open for you to try. Next up, one of my favorite games at the moment, Ark Survival Evolved did something both awesome and controversial this past week by releasing a kick-ass new DLC out of the blue, even though the game is still in early access. It's kind of a no-no. The new DLC is called Scorched Earth, and it's everything I ever wanted in a DLC for Ark. Well, just about. I mean, there are now elemental dragons and freaking rock elementals. I mean, that's awesome. Bakerman Brad and I are already playing it. It's a blast, and it's challenging. Surviving the overbearing heat and new creatures is definitely tough. It'll set you back about 19 bucks, 20 bucks actually, but it's worth it if you're a fan of Ark already. That being said, it's always a super risky situation for a developer to release paid DLC for a game that is still in early access. This didn't settle well for a lot of players in Ark based on several reasons. The main one being that, you know, the question of, like, why aren't they focusing their efforts on finishing the game, optimizing it, making it run better on other computers, you know, adding what they said they were going to add in the beginning. This move makes it seem like they're releasing this DLC in order to grab a little extra money, which may be the case, especially considering their $40 million lawsuit with Trendy Entertainment. Not to get into a long and drawn-out debate on this topic, but I don't particularly like the fact that they launched the DLC before being officially launched, but at the same time I kind of think they did pull it off quite well. It made me that much more interested in the game, and the DLC sales are through the roof, so not everyone is upset. I mean, I look at it this way, with the main game always on sale, even with the price of the game and the new DLC combined, it's still less expensive than your typical AAA title, and I feel like even in early access it's delivered more than a lot of AAA titles have recently, especially No Man's Sky. So I forgive them, but it was a risky move. Don't let it happen again. And for the record, Brad and I both bought the DLC before the trailer even finished. On a similar note, H1Z1 King of the Kill plans to leave its Steam Early Access this month on September 20th. The launch version of King of the Kill will include the totally revamped world map that I talked about in last week's recap, a redesigned user interface, Twitch integration, of course, a scoring system, and plenty more. Through the rest of its early access, the game will cost you $19.99, but once it officially launches, the price jumps $10 to $29.99. So I'd say do your research now if you haven't already, and figure out if you want to buy this game before it officially releases. Save some money that way. This launches on PC, of course, and according to the release announcement and update, the devs have decided to pause their efforts on the console versions of the game to put 100% of the focus on PC. For now. The plan is to get that going again shortly after the PC launch. So check out the new launch trailer and release date updates from the link in the description below for more details. Keeping up with the Shear Madness update for Evolve Stage 2, this past week we see the final update, which introduces the newest medic, Paladin Parnell, along with a recap of all the goodies that arrived in the months-long update spree. As a second cross-class character, aside from Abe, Paladin Parnell is a rocket-launching medic with rockets that explode on impact, creating a small but really strong healing AoE. The drawback here is that it doesn't do any damage, but for that you've got a nice shotgun that also lowers your heal burst cooldown after hitting a target, and that heal burst is a self-heal ability. Comes in handy. Beyond that, you've got the Righteous Fury ability that gives you a huge but brief increase to fire rate and reload speed, along with it reducing incoming damage. So now that the Shear Madness update is over, what's next? Well, it looks like the team wants to get the Behemoth monster back in players' hands, so they're reworking him. And when they do re-release him, he'll have a brand new passive ability, the first of its kind for any monster. That's probably several weeks out. For now, enjoy the new updates and check out the new recap trailer to get a bigger taste for what's new. Speaking of new, at PAX West last week, we saw a new gameplay trailer for an interesting game called Mirage, Arcane Warfare, a fantasy combat game from the same creators as Chivalry, Medieval Warfare. In this game, you can literally obliterate your enemies with magical power, or take the more traditional approach and behead them with your sword. It's pretty brutal, as you can tell. The cool part is, like Chivalry, Mirage is a skill-based game, so you can expect some awesome fights using some of the same combat mechanics from Chivalry, laced with magic spells, of course. As good as the gameplay looks so far from this trailer, the game is currently in alpha, with signups already available at their site. And finally, for a last bit of news, Black Desert announced the start of its bi-weekly Awakening series that happens to start off with the newly introduced Warrior class. As the Warrior class, you can now unlock your Greatsword after level 55 and take to the battle with newly unlocked skills. The new trailer you see playing here shows that in action. And with these new powers, it'll make it just a little bit easier to go toe-to-toe against new and powerful enemies in the Valencia 2 expansion. Here you'll find two new open-world dungeons, the Akhman Temple and Hysteria Ruins, new areas of the desert to explore or get lost in, and a massive Harpy world boss. But you might want to be careful wandering out in the desert alone. The PvP penalty system doesn't quite have the same effect there as it does in other areas, so new and low-level players will be fresh for the picking. Check out the new videos and update info from the links in the description below. And that's about it for all the news this week. My friends at MMOHuts.com are working on their PAX West coverage, if you haven't already noticed. They've got plenty already posted, so definitely hit them up for more PAX news as the embargoes start to lift. As for me, I just found out that my wife and I are going to have a baby boy. We're going to have a little James Blonde running around in early 2017, so we are very excited about that. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Pick up more information about the news featured in the video from the links in the description below. Feel free to share more gaming news in the comments, as well as share this video with your friends, of course. But until next time, guys, that's going to be it for me. I'm James Blonde. See you out there, gamers.